Welcome to Smart Branding, a podcast dedicated to branding, naming, and domain names. I'm Tatiana Bonneau, and with my guests, we try to help you create and grow strong, memorable, and meaningful brands online. I believe time is one of our most precious assets, and so I want to thank you in advance if you decide to spend the next 30 minutes with us. I promise to do my best to make those worth it. Let's go! So my guest today is Michael Santiago, serial entrepreneur who has 2 decades of experience in online media and the news industry. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting stuff. So first, thank you so much for joining us, Michael. It's really a pleasure, and I'm excited to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me, Tatiana. This is my second podcast, but I'm excited to get into what I know about domain names. And I feel like your audience, if they're interested in domain names, it's going to really shift their perspective in seeing domain names in a different light. So I'm excited to get into my story. And I guess, should I jump into the Newswire story first?
Let's start with, I would like to have a bit of your story first. Like, how did you get to, do what you do? I think I did a little bit like look into your story, and you actually started quite early with the whole, online digital media domain names as part of it. So give me a little bit of background on that.
Oh, wow. We want to go all the way back in 1998?
Oh, let's. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm old school. I'm older than people think, and I've
Okay.
been online since Google, before Google was online. It was Alta Vista. So yeah, if
I
you want to
remember
take it
that.
back to 1998, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, I guess so. It started. I've always had like the entrepreneurial mind, always thinking about, oh, how can I make money? Even at a young age, there were certain things that I would do trying to make money, like side hustles. But when the internet came out in the early 90s, I had my first computer. Somehow I stumbled upon eBay. And just browsing through
Hmm.
eBay, I came across an auction. It was they were selling this information CD, and I guess you can call it like an underground information CD, like teaching you how to get free cable TV, teaching you how to make free what is it, paid phone calls. You remember those phone booths
Okay.
and like change?
Yeah, I know, I do. We used to run away from school and call random numbers to like mess with people, and so that's funny. I don't know how that's funny, but it was funny.
Yes, so the information in this, it was actually a floppy disk, right? And it was like sort of like forbidden information. Anyways, I thought it was
Mm.
interesting, and it came with resale rights. So I purchased it, created another auction, and did what a dozen other people were doing, resold it, made a few $100. But then it hit me. I said, well, why don't I increase the perceived value? Why don't I create this thing called a website? Because websites were new at the time. So I'm like,
Mm.
how do I create a website? So I created a website with my roommate at the time, Jimmy, and we came up with a pretty cool domain name to describe our product. And the domain name, which is my first domain name ever, was nobodyknows.com. So it's like
Cool.
nobody knows this underground information, but you can buy it from us
Nice.
from nobodyknows.com. So that was my
Very
first domain name. And
cool.
it made money. It made maybe several hundred per month. But from that point on, I realized, wow, I can actually make money from home or from anywhere there's an internet connection. And remember, this is
Mm.
1998. So I never really wanted to have the traditional 9 to 5 corporate job. I always, ever since I was younger, I would see my mom working. She was a chemist. My dad was an engineer. They always had some sort of issue with their bosses, always feeling like they were struggling. So that kind of like I grew up with that, and I never wanted to have a boss. And I've had also like throughout the years before that, I worked at the mall selling shoes. So I've had the retail jobs, and I realized
Mm.
that I want to do something for myself. So this is 1998, and I had a site, nobodyknows.com. And from that point on, it opened my eyes to the potential of making money online, right? So
Mm.
that introduced me to affiliate programs, domain names. And so from 1999 to like 2003, I was doing random things like I was promoting Amazon actually in Alta
Mm.
Vista. And I think I was ranked number one for Amazon Books or something. And I made some pretty good commissions from Amazon. But in 2003, I registered a domain, myblog.com, right? And this is when blogging was like the newest thing. It was like the hottest trend. And in 2004, I got an inquiry. Someone offered me $60,000 for myblog.com. And when I got that offer, I was like, wow, this is a great offer. But then also something in my mind told me, well, if this is the initial offer, what would they really be willing to pay? Right. So I did some research on this buyer and I found out it was an entrepreneur who just recently sold his advertising company for like $15 million or something. So I knew this person had money. So I'm like, they gave me an initial offer of 60,000. Anyways, long story short, within a year, I was able to get the price up to 400,000. So I sold myblog.com for $400,000. This was in 2005, I believe. Fast forward to 2006, I was just browsing an internet marketing forum, Digital Point. I don't know if you were online that time, but it's one of the most famous, I don't think it's around now, but Digital Point forums. Anyways, there was two sites for sale. And one of them was getblogs.com. The other one was i-newswire.com. So I was looking for a different opportunity. And at the time, I was creating these niche content sites. What they were called made for AdSense sites. And the reason why they were called made for AdSense sites was that you can essentially create a site with crappy content, just with like keywords on the page, and you would get ranked for long tail keywords. This was a thing that a lot of people were doing and making a lot of money. So I was making pretty good money from that. And the strategy was just get links to your made for AdSense sites. Just keep driving links to these sites and you'll get traffic. So I said to myself, well, these two sites for sale, they're for sale, and they both have page rank value of 7. And if you remember page rank value of, 7 is pretty good. So they were for sale for $35,000. And I had some money from the myblog.com sale. So I said, well, okay, this is what I'm focused on, made for AdSense sites. I never thought the gravy train would ever end. I always thought it would just keep going up and up and up. So anyways, I bought these two sites, paid $35,000 for both of them. The bonus was i-newswire.com was making $1,000 a month. And it was pretty consistent, right? And this was a site that I knew nothing about. Like, it was a press release distribution site, but I really knew nothing about it. So it ran on autopilot for like 2 years. And I bought the sites and I was linking out from the homepage to my made for AdSense sites. And my income for AdSense, of course, it increased. I think it almost doubled over the next like 6 months after I purchased those two sites. The problem is in 2008 or 2009, Google started banning these sites and started seeing that, okay, there's too many of these sites and it's like spam content. So overnight, my income went from about well over 10,000 a month in revenue to several hundred in AdSense revenue. So it completely got obliterated. And this was, I think, 2008, 2009. So I went back to the drawing board and I said, well, what do I have that's making consistent money? And the only thing that came up was i-newswire. And, as a domain investor, making the decision to work on a site that had a dash, it was painful. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you can relate because you're a
Yeah.
your
Oh, I
domain.
know. I know.
So imagine waking up every morning trying to be excited about your project, but seeing that.
And like, out.
So yeah, so I said to myself, well, let's give it a chance. It's making money. I know I can improve it. So I decided let's focus on it for the next few years. So I did that. And the few changes that I made was I did a complete redesign and I added a subscription component to it where customers can subscribe and get a discount on press release submissions. And that small change made it from a site that was making $1,000 a month all the way up to 20,000 a month over the course of like 3 years, right? So I was a solopreneur, is just by myself with a contractor who was reviewing the press releases. But in 2013, I was like 35 and I was about to get married, and I wanted a lump sum of money. I wanted to relax. I wanted to take it easy. So I said to myself, let me see if there is a buyer for this site, because it's a pretty good business. And I put it on the market. I worked with Quiet Light Brokerage. You've probably heard of them. I
Mm.
worked with an amazing broker there, Jason Yelowitz, and he helped me over the course of, I think, 3 months, and we found a buyer. His name just happened to be Mike, and he was also from New Jersey. So it just felt right. And he also believed in the power of a premium domain name. So we got along really well right off the bat. And I sold him the majority of the business, and I retained 30%. And that was 2013. I brought my two brothers on board, and we just started to grow the business, right? So we grew the business, but we always had in the back of our mind, we want to make it $1 million company. Our goal was $10 million of revenue per year, because as you know, at $10 million, that's when VCs start to look at you. You're more investable. And also potential acquirers will look at you and say, okay, this company is doing 10 million a year. This is a substantial business. So that was always our goal. But we knew we could never get there with iDashNewswire. There was just no way. So my partner went to work in trying to secure newswire.com, and it took over a year, but in 2015, we were able to buy it for 6 figures. And 3 days after we acquired the name, we switched over, we upgraded. And I know we probably should have planned it out more carefully, but I was so excited. I even told, I think you know Elliot Silver, right?
Yeah.
From domaininvesting.com.
Yeah.
I told him that we upgraded, and I said, hey, maybe this would be a cool story to post on your blog. And he posted it. And in the back of my mind, I thought, how cool would it be a few years later if I came back and said we sold the business for millions of dollars? I thought to myself, that would be the best story possible. And fortunately, that's exactly what happened. So in 2015, we ended the year at 890,000 from a few hundred thousand the year before. And the only big change that we made was the domain upgrade. And I think in my case, in this story with iDashNewswire to Newswire, it's a little more clear to founders out there, trying to understand what's the importance of a domain name. But many times founders have difficulty understanding, well, does it really make a big difference? In our case, and I think in most cases, if you upgrade to a better domain, absolutely, hands down, it's going to make a difference. So in 2015, we ended the year at 890,000. And the crazy thing is, the next year, we more than doubled our revenue. And the year after that, in 2017, we didn't double it again, but we were like almost 4 million. And in 2018, we were like 5 million. All the way up until when I exited the business, we were doing close to 8 or 9 million a year. And I exited in 2021. And the reason why I exited was I worked on the business from 2013. Well, actually, if you consider when I first acquired it, that was 2006, all the way up until 2021. And this was right after the pandemic, right? The pandemic. And I felt I need to change. I don't want to be in the PR space. And I felt like now is the right time. The valuation is in the millions of dollars. And up until that time, I was sacrificing. I wasn't taking a salary. We were reinvesting all of the profits back into the business. So I wanted to realize some of the rewards of building this business. So I exited in 2021 for millions of dollars. And the crazy thing is, a year and a half later, my partner sold the company for $44 million to a publicly traded company on NASDAQ, Issuer Direct. So if I hung on to it a year and a half longer, yeah, I could have made a little bit more, but I'm still super happy with my exit amount. And now I'm here telling my story about this is what a domain name can do for your business.
Mm,
Of course, it's not just the domain, right? You know, we had an
of
amazing
course.
team, we had a great product, but with the best domain name, everything comes so much easier. I'm pretty sure
Mm.
you can kind of relate to that. You've probably seen so many different transformations with rebrands, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So
That's we try to highlight them because you are one of, and I have to say, I see that more and more often people share those stories, but usually they don't. Whether it's because they don't stop and think, oh, the domain name had something to do with that success, or it's just, as it often happens, people talk more about, when they're not happy about something, and when it's going well, it's just, it's going well. And so we do try and highlight those stories, and I think it's great that you share the story and that you're aware of it. And I see more and more people actually even do more than that and actually use it as a PR to say, the latest one we wrote about was ConvertKit rebranding to Kit. And they're
right.
literally like, they're rebranding in public. They made a video, we're going to change, and how are we going to do it? And they involve people. And you had obviously a lot of people saying, oh, why are you changing? ConvertKit was good. And all of that happening in public, which is like, really brave of them to do. Like, I don't know if I would have done that in public, but more and more people that are not just, realizing the power of a good name and the matching domain name, but talking about it more. And I think that's absolutely great.
Yeah, so I guess my perspective's a little bit different because I'm a domain investor, but I'm also a builder. So I
Mm,
went into the rebrand knowing that, hey, if this works out, it really proves my theory
yes.
that domain names matter. So that's why I'm
Mm.
so happy that it actually worked out, because if we failed, it wouldn't, I wouldn't have a story here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so simple and obvious when you, even just as you say it. Like, I think if anybody listening is honest with themselves, and you get approached by a company, or you end up by, some advertising or whatever on a company that's called iNewsWire, and then you have newswire.com, which one are you gonna, trust more? Which one stands out more? Which one are you gonna remember and refer to, etc., etc.? It's just so, I had an example, and I don't want to badmouth people, so I'm not going to say the name of the company, but I'm using an app for running, and a particular service related to running. And just recently, my yearly membership expired, and I got an email saying, "Do you want to renew that? We're offering you whatever," because they just, my card has expired, and they presumed I just don't want the service anymore, so they're trying to give me some percentage, to get me back. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I mean, why not? I was going to pay it anyway, and now it's with a discount. But the thing is, I click on it, and it goes to whatever the brand name .cc, and I'm like, is that the real? Is that them? Is that not them? Is that some scam? And I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I was like, I'm just gonna wait for something to happen on the app, or I don't know. I'm just, I don't know. And it's that, and it's not just because I'm in domains. I think everybody has that more and more, and that's just one aspect of it.
Absolutely. I feel like it's like a subconscious thing. When someone
Hmm,
hears a domain, they don't even realize they're judging the
of
business.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess for founders, I've been speaking to a lot of founders recently because they hear my story and they ask me, well, you think you would have succeeded without newswire.com? And hands down, absolutely. I tell them no. There's absolutely no way, right? And a lot of founders, they're using terrible domains, right? And they don't see the value in investing even tens of thousands of dollars in a domain.
Hmm.
And I've actually kind of formulated some sort of like evaluation for them to think about, is this
Hmm.
domain name worth it? And the way to do that is to ask them, what is your end goal? What's your vision for the business? Like, if you
Hmm.
want to create a business that generates several hundred thousand a year, like a lifestyle business, and the domain name, your best domain name, is available for, let's say, a couple 100,000 or 300,000, then maybe it doesn't make sense for you,
Hmm.
right? But if you're looking to raise money or exit for millions of dollars, what's a $500,000, right? And
Hmm.
it's nothing really, because without that domain, it's going to be so much more difficult. With the domain,
Hmm.
it's going to make the journey fun, exciting, easier, more profound. One thing that founders don't really realize is that a great domain name boosts the morale of your team. It boosts the morale of your employees. They may not even know it, but I was talking to my previous developer recently, and he told me he had a hat that said Newswire on it, and he wore it with pride everywhere. And I
Oh,
told
so
him,
cool.
so the domain name mattered to you, right? And he said, absolutely. He was so proud to say, I work for newswire.com. It's not, I work for i-newswire.com. It's different. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
intangibles that it's hard to quantify and it's hard to explain to
Yes.
a founder. But I tell them, if you want to align your vision with your brand, you have to invest. You have to invest in it. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very, very good point on the team. And I've been mentioning it recently in other podcasts as well. That's something that people absolutely underestimate. And even to a point where they'll go, oh, what are my team members going to think? You know, I spent all of that money on the domain name. And it's like, they are the ones that are actually struggling with the bad name, probably more than you. Like literally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I've had that, and I've had that more than once, where you know, I'd be talking to the principals in a company who are saying, oh, it doesn't matter, it's just a detail, it's a nice to have, we don't need it, we have all those other names. And they would have their team members getting their own name wrong when they, you know, talking to me or emailing me, they would quote a different name because their domain is so bad. And that's their job. That's, you know, the people that work in the company. Like, what about the customers and the investors? And it's just crazy. It's absolutely insane.
Absolutely. So like when I speak to founders, I say, let me give you an example of how a domain can help you, you know, scale your business. I said, let's consider a hypothetical example, right? Two companies, let's say everything is equal across the board. You know, the product is great, customer support is great, everything is great, but the brand, the domain name is different. One has a one-word domain, the other one has a something domain.io. Not to knock .io, but we know .com is king. Everything equal, if you run ads with the same text, but with a different domain, 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10, the company with the one word brand is always going to convert better, right? And once you start converting more, those customers can tell another person where they purchased whatever your service is, and it's easier to spread the message, word of mouth. One word domain is so easy. There's no messing up with .io, .net, or anything subpar. .com is king. So that's how I explain to founders, it's a compounding effect. Everything you do, even internal communication, like you mentioned with the employees messing up the names. Yeah, even internally, if the name is simple, it's a one-word brandable, people are gonna know it like instantly.
And yeah, that trust that you get, and that, I think it says commitment. And you've mentioned a few times when you were telling your story, and now when we're talking about, you know, other entrepreneurs, there is that commitment of, you know, we know what we're doing, we're here to stay, so we're investing in that brand, and it shows. And I've said that oftentimes, all of the arguments that I hear entrepreneurs give me, for example, when they're talking about, oh, I don't need to invest in that, you know, perfect domain name for my business. It's like, oh, it doesn't matter. We're not big enough yet. We're not going to that market. You know, we can this, we can that. And it's like, you're telling me that, you know, behind closed doors, but that is the message that you're sending with your domain name everywhere, all the time.
Absolutely. I
So,
like that. Yes, that's so
yeah.
true.
And people don't see it for some reason, or they like to, you know, sort of close their eyes and not see it. And I don't even understand why, because I think there's and I was talking to Andrew Rosner, which you in the space, so you must know him, Media Options. And it was funny because I was telling him, since I'm a bit newer to the industry than he is, that when I first got into domain names, it was really a shock, like, what's wrong with this? Why do people not understand that? Why do I, having worked for 10 years in IT, not understand domain names at the level, you know, at the point when I entered that space? I was like, why didn't I know about all that? Why didn't I know that the domain names are so important? And he actually interrupted me and said, of course, it's the domain industry's fault. It's we haven't educated people. I mean, how else are they supposed to know? And there is a part of that there is lack of education, lack of understanding, and there is also, I think, a problem with the fact that people look at domain names, and even companies that have absolutely zero issues, like you said, if you have the vision, you have the company working, investing 6-7 figure, even, I mean, you spend that on a large enough company, you spend that on coffee per year, or on party for New Year, or whatever. It's not a money issue. Oftentimes it's more of a, people look at it as like, yeah, but somebody bought it for $10, and why are they selling it now for a million?
That is true. Yeah.
And it's really, I don't know if I could call it an ego problem, or it really bugs people. And I think I've always thought, I wrote about it on Smart Branding. There's the Philip Kotler's quote of people or companies worry too much about the cost of doing something. They should worry more about the cost of not doing it. I think it perfectly applies here, where it's like, okay, you can sit and philosophize and get annoyed about, whoever paid whatever. And the reality is actually, I mean, the internet, the domain names have been around for as long as the internet has been. So very likely somebody sitting on a domain name that they're selling for 7 figures didn't buy it for $10. But even if they did, what does it have to do with your business? Like, if your business is suffering and losing, either literally losing money because of not owning that name, or losing opportunities, who cares? I mean,
I agree with you 100%. I think that the challenge for founders is seeing the potential. It's hard for them to see. If they've never experienced the benefits from a premium domain, it's so difficult to explain to a founder. I think that's the problem. And founders look at domain names as an afterthought. Look at OpenAI, for example. I don't know if you know my story.
I was going to ask you about it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, tell me about that, because that's just a crazy story.
It's funny. So I did a podcast with Domain Name Wire, Andrew, and we combined both stories, the Newswire one and the ChatGPT one. And I thought to myself, maybe next time I'll keep it separate, because you know what I mean? Because I wanted people to really focus on the newswire.com story, because that's a profound story on why domain names matter. But ChatGPT, it does portray the reason why domain names should not be an afterthought. Look at OpenAI. They even if they didn't think they were going to achieve that much success, they still should have spent $10 or $9.63 to register the domain, right?
Yeah.
So it's just that story is just like a wild story that I still can't believe I was the one that registered the domain. Like, if I had some sort of complex like scraping system with keywords, then I would say, okay, yeah, fine. Then that's why I registered it. But it was literally, I was eating my dinner at the table, scrolling through YouTube on the TV, and I saw a video come up that said, "Mind blown, ChatGPT is amazing." So I watched the video. Within 35 seconds, I'm like, oh, this is the newest thing. I need to go check. As a domain investor, I need to go check what domains can I register right now. So I went to GoDaddy, and I picked up a few GPT names, and I went back to the video. I started watching the video, and then it hit me. I'm like, why didn't I even check ChatGPT.com?
Because I guess you presume there's no way they don't have it.
Exactly. Like, I assumed, like, why wouldn't? Of course they would. But then I went back to GoDaddy 15 minutes later, and it was available.
Oh my gosh.
So I registered it. Yeah, I registered it. I still can't believe I was the one to register it. And I put a tracker on there, and it was getting like 200 or 300 visitors per hour. I mean, of course, you can imagine ChatGPT, even the first week when it came out, it was just like such a phenomenon, right? And I have a story behind why I priced it the way I priced it. And ultimately, it came down to, no one has a crystal ball. You don't know if this is going to be the greatest thing in the world. And, some can argue and say it is the greatest thing in the world, at least right now. So retrospect, yeah, maybe I sold it too low. I sold it for 85,000. But who's going to argue on an ROI in 8 days of 800,000%?
Yeah.
$10 to 85K. So
yeah,
it was like a lotto. That's like a lotto ticket domain sale. That's how I describe it. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it just feels amazing.
No, it's crazy. Yeah. I want to go back to a little bit. at the beginning when you were talking about, and that's still, I mean, we're going to talk about domain names, so it is related to domain names. When you said you were doing the blogs and the AdSense and the keywords, and then overnight it went, you know, your revenue like literally plummeted because Google changed some algorithms. That's another thing that I think people miss out on. And since we're going to focus on the newswire side, like a lot of people feel that, you know, you can just buy traffic, like buy traffic from Google, from social media, from whatever. And so the domain name, it doesn't matter because, you know, people are just going to be clicking on links. And I think that was a good point, and it happened quite early with you, where you realize that that can change overnight. So it's not reliable, and you're like, okay, I need to build a business on a strong brand. And that's, you know, where the newswire story started. But yeah, tell me a bit more about that, and how, particularly in the newswire case, you worked on building that strong brand.
Yes, absolutely. So when my AdSense revenue tanked literally overnight, like I said, I took inventory, I looked at everything that I owned, and it was iDash Newswire that was consistently generating $1,000 a month. And as far as building a strong brand, you know, like I said, I struggled because it had a dash in it, but it was my best opportunity at the time. So that's why I decided to kind of focus on a real business, because the made for AdSense stuff back in the day, well, I didn't really view it as a business. It was more of like a cash grab. It was more like, oh, I can create more sites and get more links. I can make more money. It was simple arbitrage, right? And it's not unlike what's happening right now with content sites getting obliterated. It's funny how, you know, history repeats itself, right? Google now is penalizing all these content sites, and a lot of these content sites have great content, right? So it's happening again. And I really believe, like, to distinguish yourself from just a regular content site, invest in a premium domain name. But that's not to say Google's not going to penalize your site because it has a premium domain name. I feel like if you're building a brand, you have social signals, you have all this social content, Google sees that and legitimizes your business as a real business versus just a content site without any social media visibility. Yeah.
I think, and I did a interview recently, which is not yet published, but we were talking about that as well, about Google. And it's funny that a lot of entrepreneurs like are obsessed with Google and search engines, and how do they see me, and how do I rank there, and how this and how that, and you know, how many followers, and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and whatever the latest thing is, or whatever their audience is. And the person I was talking to was asking me about, you know, how does that relate to domains? And I think very much, like, literally the only piece of the internet that you actually own and control is your domain name. And I find it really strange that people completely forget or ignore that, not to mention that you'd even have like businesses that, like, you'd go to their website and look, it hasn't been updated in 5 years or something. And it's just crazy that you would put all that money and effort to get onto different platforms that you don't control, as opposed to using them as tools to drive people to your website, and just make sure that more and more people just go straight there the next time, because, you know, that costs you nothing then. It's just a no-brainer.
It's baffling. I know, you know, it comes down to just being unaware. They just don't. And I feel like your podcast helps. My story helps. If we can keep giving stories and inspiring stories about why domain names actually matter, I feel like more founders will convert and they'll upgrade their domain names. And I think that's a transformation that's happening currently. I feel like more companies are spending more money to acquire domain names that will put them on the map and, like, forever.
Absolutely, definitely seeing more stories, and that's absolutely great to see. I think that's something that was lacking, and people, like I say, there was that misconception that you're going to be judged for spending, you know, that much money on the domain name, and you know, people are nervous about what are the employees going to say, what are their customers going to say, and how is that going to go. And more people are actually starting to talk about it, and seeing and sharing all of those positive effects. So that's a really great, like, literally, it was it was a rare thing to see people talking about it. And literally, we on Smart Branding, we have a section for upgrades and for rebrands. So we look out for those stories, but it was very rare to see somebody actually openly talking about it. So we would write about it, but it would be like, our analysis of what's happened and why it may have happened, and just notifying people, okay, so that company upgraded, that company rebranded. And more often you would have the founders or the people in the company sharing their story, sharing what issues they solved with that domain upgrade or rebrand, and that's really, really good to see.
I love that. And I have a domain that's perfect for that rebrand story. Like, because I had the same idea, but you're actually doing what I was hoping someone would do in the industry. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't even think I would be on this podcast, but I appreciate you asking me to be on it, and I had a great time.
Sure.
We're on 40 minutes, but
Yeah.
if you have any more questions, I could.
Last question. That's my kind of classic last question. What are you up to now? What are you looking forward to?
Oh, yes, sure. So I'm working on onlinebusiness.com. And it's interesting because, I do sell domain names, but my goal really is to build a business on a premium domain names, right? So I want to build out my top domains and eventually sell them from onlinebusiness.com to just really prove that, domain names can make a big difference, right? And I want to help founders acquire their best domain name, whether it's from me or from another seller. It doesn't have to be from me. I just want it's like a cheat code. You know what I mean? Like if you get your best domain name,
I love that.
everything
Yeah.
else comes so much easier. And I want to help founders understand that. And I think with my story and from onlinebusiness.com, I feel like I can do that. And that's my mission.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I love the way you said it, that cheat code. That's very much kind of, yeah, it does make it easier. And I think, as you said earlier, I think people, like, if you have a great company and you have a great team and you have a great product, obviously you're destined for success. But like it's almost like, why have something that pulls you back and makes it harder when you can have the opposite, something that propels you forward? It just makes no sense.
It's the difference maker, 100%.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, that's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we can talk for hours and hours again, and maybe we can do like a second part where we're going to talk about other things, a little bit more focused on topic. That was lovely. Thank you so much.
All right, Tatiana, thank you for having me. I had a great time, and yeah, hopefully I'll be on again another time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome to Smart Branding, a podcast dedicated to branding, naming, and domain names. I'm Tatiana Bonneau, and with my guests, we try to help you create and grow strong, memorable, and meaningful brands online. I believe time is one of our most precious assets, and so I want to thank you in advance if you decide to spend the next 30 minutes with us. I promise to do my best to make those worth it. Let's go!